I'm an architect, and as much as I'm in love with my profession, I love science, particularly physics, because science physics is the pursuit of the workings of nature. And as William just introduced, lately I have come to call nature, universe, God design, and consider it as God's greatest piece of architecture. My mentor, and said to be Leonardo da Vinci of the 20th century, and who also coined the term spaceship Earth, Buckminster Fuller, once said, "If poetry is saying the most with the least amount of words, then Einstein must have been the greatest poet in history. Why? Because he summed up the entire universe in E equals mc squared." I think this alone is very beautiful, don't you? So God design is pure poetry. God design is good design because it's simple and beautiful. God design is ecological and economical. But the most important thing about God design is that it's a system of relationships. The atom, the basic building block of our material universe, is 99.999% empty space. In other words, at the heart of matter, there is no matter, just invisible relationships. Our spaceship Earth, too, is a system of relationships. About 50 years ago, James Lovelock came up with a theory he called Gaia theory, in which he states that animate as well as inanimate objects self-regulate and self-balance each other. But needless to say, our spaceship Earth is undergoing lots of troubles, like global warming, volcanic eruptions, tsunamis, hurricanes, typhoons, what have you. But not only is our Earth witnessing problems physically, but socially as well. Some time ago, a series of blogs on the internet was compiled into a book called "If the World Were a Village of 100 People." In it, it said that out of the 100, 20 are malnourished and 1 is dying. That 15 are overweight. Of all the wealth in the world, 6 own 59%, and all are Americans. 74 own 39%, and 20 share 2%. Of all the energy in the world, 20 use up 80%, and 80 share 20%. Only 1 in the village has higher education, and 2 own computers, but 14 cannot even read. Why such unbalance and injustice? Many, many years ago, an economist by the name of Thomas Malthus conducted a survey and came up with the following conclusion. Human population is increasing faster than the human production of food, such that 100% of humanity cannot survive. Then came a biologist by the name of Charles Darwin, who said that if what Malthus says is true, then by the principle of the survival of the fittest, only the strongest will survive. Next came another economist by the name of Karl Marx, who said that if what Malthus and Darwin say are true, then the workers, since they are the ones directly related to the production of foods and other resources, should be the ones to survive. Then came Hitler, and others followed to the recent ethnic cleansing in Europe, East Europe. And most recently, we've had what we call the Lehman shock, or the Lehman Brothers. Needless to say, this was not a war in the usual sense of the word. But I don't think I'm exaggerating to say that it was a kind of war in disguise in peacetime. And why do such events occur? Well, it's because Malthus said that 100% of humanity cannot survive, and by the principle of the survival of the fittest, only the strong will survive. And this kind of a mentality is so deeply rooted in our psyche, in our subconscious, that we actually live it every day without realizing it. But in 1957, the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization came up with the following report saying that for the first time in the history of mankind, we humans are able to produce, through our technology and development, what more than 100% of humanity can consume, and keep on increasing that livelihood. But how many world leaders are aware of this fact? Even if they are, how many actually live it? Of course, animals still live by the principle of the survival of the fittest, but they do so from a purely biological need. They do not kill needlessly, wastefully, let alone malevolently. There is a biological instinct to survive. And of course, not all competition is negative and destructive. Like the Olympics, for instance. I think it's very constructive and positive. But, needless to say, wars and conflicts, in the name of religions, ideologies, philosophies, power, greed, or just pure likes and dislikes, or just for the fun of it, is negative and destructive. There are certain truths becoming increasingly evident within the science community. And one is the fact that Darwin was only half right. Scientists today are becoming increasingly convinced that, of course, competition was very important, but more important than competition was cooperation. And it was cooperation that has brought evolution to where we are today. I don't think I need to give you an example of competition, but let me give you one example of cooperation. As you know, our bodies are made up of countless number of cells. 1 kilogram of body weight is said to contain 1 trillion cells. So, a man weighing 70 kilograms is said to contain 70 trillion cells. Now imagine what would happen if these cells did not cooperate, but instead began to fight amongst each other. Needless to say, life could not be sustained. Now, our spaceship Earth has a population of a bit over 7 billion now. Now, that is only 1/10,000th of the number of cells in a body of a man weighing 70 kilograms. Now, if our cells without brains can cooperate and sustain life, we, with brains, should be able to more efficiently and easily sustain life on our planet peacefully. Another truth becoming increasingly evident is the relationship between nature and nurture. What determines the quality of a human being? Is it nature? Is it genetics, DNA? Or is it nurture? Is it education? Is it the environment? Ever since doctors Watson and Crick discovered the double helix of DNA, it's been said, and it's still believed, that DNA governs everything. Not only our physical selves, but even our human characteristics, personalities. In other words, the age-old nature-nurture debate was finally solved, or it seemed. Now, an American biologist by the name of Bruce Lipton has has come up with the following. He says that, of course, DNA is very important, but more important than DNA is our environment. And according to him, there are two kinds of environment, one visible, one invisible. And the more important is the invisible, how we think, feel, imagine. Our environment has the power to alter our DNA, and this has been proven scientifically already. In other words, the age-old saying that it's all in your mind has been scientifically proven. And Lipton goes on to say that the most important environment, especially for a child, is that of family love at home. Many, many years ago, as a student in college, I read a book by the Nobel laureate Konrad Lorenz called On Aggression. In it, he writes that animals have this instinct of aggression, and by that, and through the principle of survival of the fittest, they survive. However, this instinct of aggression is not allowed within the same species because it would be suicidal and annihilate the whole species. So what happens to this instinct of aggression within the same species? Towards the end of the book, Lorenz concludes that this instinct of aggression turns to love. Now, wait a minute, I thought. Isn't that too anthropomorphic, romantic, and I just couldn't swallow. But almost 50 years since then have passed, and now I have come to understand, appreciate, and convinced that Lorenz was right. Love is simply and purely a biological need that we just cannot do without. In the science world, there's a certain quest for the holy grail of science. And namely, is the unification of the four forces of nature, namely gravity, electromagnetism, the weak force and the strong force within the atom. Now, scientists are working day and night to somehow solve this riddle, this mystery. Why? Because if solved, it would be an automatic Nobel Prize winner. I don't mean to surprise you by saying that I believe I have solved the mystery. But unfortunately, I won't be winning the Nobel Prize because my answer is not what scientists today are looking for, as my answer is love. Now, I don't want to sound cheesy by introducing a word like love, as I have no intention to be so. But science has taught me, and I am convinced, that without being anthropomorphic, sentimental, or romantic, love is not only a spiritual need, nor is it just a biological need, but a physical need that made this physical universe possible. Now, why do I think so? Because frontier scientists are convinced that mind is over matter. At the heart of matter, there is no matter. The atom is 99.999% empty space. When the Big Bang occurred, it occurred from nothing, no thing, a complete void, a vacuum, but from some sort of a divine, you might call it, awareness, consciousness, will, intent. Now I ask myself, was this creation of the physical universe benevolent or malevolent? My answer is benevolent. Why? Because to me, everything in God design, in this universe, is positive, evolution is about getting better all the time. Otherwise, it would not be evolution, but devolution. Allow me to relate a very personal story that happened many, many years ago, almost 20, I believe. I was in a very serious car accident, and I hurt my neck and shoulders very badly. And I went to all sorts of large university hospitals, small clinics, masseurs, sports, massage parlors, chiropractitioners. I even went to a New Age healing practice, but nobody was able to help me. One doctor even said, "Suzuki-san, you'll never get healed." That's a very nice advice from a medical practitioner. Desperate, I was introduced to one final doctor, a relatively young doctor practicing Oriental medicine. And the first time I met him, he said, "Suzuki-san, there are two forces in the universe. One is life force, and the other is the healing force. Life force is a miracle. I mean, we never asked for it, but here we are. It's a miracle. And when something happens to this miracle force, the healing force takes effect. And don't worry. Just believe me and believe in the power of nature, God designed. You will be healed." And I believed him. And here I am, as fit as ever. The Indian science of life, Ayurveda, practically says the same thing. We are designed, we are programmed to be healthy. Health is our normal state. And we realize this wealth of health only when we are ill. Think about it. Isn't it funny almost that we can stay as we are without an itch or a hurt anywhere? DNA is our memory to stay healthy. And so what is illness? It's only the loss of memory. So in order to regain health, what is needed is just the regaining or the restoration of that memory. This is the age-old science of India, Ayurveda. Now recently, 2 American scientists are saying something similar. They say that our cells in our bodies communicate by means of water. And illness is nothing but a cell communication breakdown. So in order to regain health, what is needed is just restoring this cell communication. And so they have developed and patented what they call microcluster water. And they program these kinds of waters aimed at, for instance, the liver, the heart, kidneys, and so forth. And by drinking these microcluster water, the cells revive communication and health is restored. And this is a real thing happening today. Now, I have a question for the audience. What is cancer's best medicine? Does anybody know? Cancer's best medicine is to be happy, laugh, enjoy, and have a lot of fun, being positive. 10 years ago, I was diagnosed with cancer. And of course, I had my second opinion. I was told the same as the first, saying I should immediately have surgery or take chemo or radiation therapy. I refused and instead went to a certain enzyme bath in Kyoto. Why? Because a client of mine's wife was diagnosed with cancer, but she went to this facility in Kyoto and cured herself. Fortunately, 1 year before I was diagnosed with cancer, I was introduced and taken to this facility. And so immediately I refused all Western medical practices and went to this enzyme bath. And I have been frequenting the bath for the last 10 years because it's a prevention measure as well. But 3 years ago, just in case, I had an MRI test, and I was told there is no trace of cancer left in me. Now, this facility is not a medical clinic, so they advertise it as a health and beauty clinic. But the doctor there learned about this curing practice, process, through watching animals in nature. What the curing consists of is you lay down in a box, coffin-like box, filled with sawdust. And in it are all kinds of herbs, mints, and what have you. And it's all mixed to create this chemical reaction. So the heat is generated from within. And you bury yourself for maybe 15, 20 minutes. And you sweat like mad. It's one form of a detoxification. At the same time, the heat weakens the cancer cells. And at the same time, the enzyme seeps in through your body. And what it does is it increases your immune system. That's how cancer patients here are treated and cured. Not all cancer patients that come here are cured completely, but the doctor there prides himself in saying that at least he can prolong life through this method. Now, I was introduced to one lung cancer patient who had been told to be able to live only maybe 2-3 months. Now, he has been frequenting the place for the last 8 years, I believe, going strong. And all the patients here who have somehow overcome cancer say in unison, best medicine for cancer is to be happy, laugh a lot, enjoy, have fun, being positive. Did you know that 1/3 of all healing is nothing but a placebo effect? And this too has been proven scientifically. It's mind over matter. Positive thinking brings positive results. As you may or may not know, this room, as well as everywhere in the world, the space is filled with all sorts of waves, vibrations. And scientists are able to depict these waves, vibrations, in the computer monitor screens. Good vibes, called coherent waves, have beautiful sine curves, whereas bad vibes, called incoherent waves, show no discernible pattern. To say the least, they're not pretty. And good vibes or coherent vibes are associated with such as love, appreciation, forgiveness, peace. Whereas bad vibes, incoherent waves, are associated with hate, complaints, punishments, wars. There was a doctor in Japan by the name of Emoto, who unfortunately passed away 3 years ago. He's known the world over through his photographs of water crystals. What he does is to pour water in test tubes, and he would write some names, comments on labels, and put these labels, the words facing the water, labels with positive words such as love, peace, harmony, creates beautiful crystals like this one here. This one was with the label, thank you, arigato. And so was this one, thank you. Whereas negative words, such as bakayaro, you fool, do not create any beautiful patterns or crystals. Or mukatsuku, korosu, I kill you, you make me sick. Create these ugly patterns. Now, what I'm trying to convey to you is the fact that our nature, universe, God design is a positive world. Everything in God design is designed, programmed to be positive. And so, then love, I think, must have been the creative force that triggered the physical universe in the first place at the time of Big Bang. And if that's the case, then love should be the force to reunite the four forces of nature that were at one time, at the very beginning, one to begin with. In other words, nature, our universe, God design, is nothing but an evolution of love. It's a positive process, a positive happening. Love evolution. In essence, all religions preach the same. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. But what do we have today, especially after 9/11? Hatred and revenge begetting more hatred and revenge. I think we, and especially world leaders, have much to learn from Nelson Mandela. Mandela, as you know, was imprisoned for 27 years. Can you imagine? And when he was finally released and became president of South Africa, what did he do? He didn't choose revenge. He chose to forgive. He had whites and blacks confess and repent their wrongdoings. And he decided to let bygones be bygones. Reset and start anew. In his words, reconciliation starts here. Forgiveness starts here too. Forgiveness liberates the soul. It removes fear. That's why it's such a powerful weapon. A Palestinian doctor by the name of, hard to pronounce, Abu Laish. Dr. Abu Laish was the first Palestinian doctor to practice in an Israeli university hospital. However, one day, his 3 daughters, pictured here, were killed in an air raid by the Israeli forces. Their heads were blown off. Of course, his family, relatives and friends said, revenge. But he chose otherwise. Instead, he wrote a book, I Shall Not Hate. And he is traveling worldwide, preaching love and peace. Why? Because he says, or he believes, that love and peace, rather than hatred and wars, is what his 3 daughters in heaven are wishing for. Great leaps in human history have always occurred at times of crises. I believe we are at such a point in human history. We're at a fork where we either break through or break down. In order to break through, I believe it's not through social or mass revolutions, through demonstrations, protests, but rather It's through a spiritual awakening, a consciousness revolution in each and every individual. Only when there is love and peace within oneself, within each and every individual, is there hope for global peace. Life, I believe, is awakening to remember where we actually come from, where we originally come from. And originally, we are of and from God design. Actually, we are all in different disguises, but in essence, we are one and the same. In other words, I am you, you are I. As islands appear separate on the surface of the sea, deep down, they are one and the same. If you can see yourself in others, I think then it should change the way you look at them. So we have learned that nurture is over nature. But then again, not every nurture or environment is positive and benign. There are many children in this world that are born into a terrible, terrible environment that they can do nothing, absolutely nothing about. But there's one hope in salvation, and that is the future. We human beings are the only creature on this planet endowed with the power of the mind to be able to think and see, imagine the future. With this power of the mind, we are able to have hope and dream about tomorrow. Without hope and dream of tomorrow, there is no future. And when I think about future, I can't help but think of education. Recently, well, maybe 10 years ago, I was asked to design a school in the mountain resort of Karizawa, International School of ASAC, Karizawa, International School of Asia, Karizawa, in short, ASAC. And this is the first Japanese government-governed international boarding school, a co-ed boarding school. And I was asked to first design the school, but as I learned about its mission, vision, it was so wonderful that I raised my hand and said, please, let me help personally as well. Not just professionally, but personally. And so from the very start, I became one of the directors for the first 5 years and helped create this international school in Karizawa. Now, one of the reasons that I was very, very drawn to this school, attracted to the school, was the fact that it was an international boarding school. Unfortunately, there's none today, but when I was going to my elementary school at St. Mary's International School, St. Mary's had a boarding department, and I was a part of it. Before that, I was in a Japanese school, and this was right after the war, in a very remotely situated Saitama prefecture, in a totally Japanese school, and so I was bullied. But when I was transferred, fortunately, to St. Mary's, it was like heaven. It was heaven, period. And graduates of this school, particularly those that were in the boarding department, we all think the same. When we grow up to be adults, having lived together every day, 24 hours in such an environment, we grow up to discard wars, conflicts, as something very, very meaningless. So my solution for world peace is simply that if all schools in the world could be an international boarding school, co-ed boarding school, world peace would arrive naturally. Now, what I'm going to introduce next is not a school, but a sort of a tool of education. My mentor, Buckminster Fuller, was, as I already mentioned, a Renaissance man, and he was a jack of all trades. He was a mathematician, geometrician, architect, philosopher, writer, what have you. But his most wildest and ambitious dream, concept, was this called the world game. As the word designates, it is a game of sorts, but for the first time in game theory, up until now, game theory would have it that if someone wins, somebody has to lose. But with world game, if everybody, instead of competing, cooperated towards a common goal that would benefit everybody, everybody could become winners. So it was a win-win situation concept game. Now, what Fuller envisioned was a system of computer-simulated processes that would engage all sorts of energies, resources, food productions, all the data that would be able to be compiled into one computer system, and the computer, with the aid of these participants, would provide the best answer for all. In Fuller's words, world game was to make the world work for 100% of humanity in the shortest possible time through spontaneous cooperation without ecological offense or the disadvantage of anyone. Unfortunately, world game has never been played in its true form. Why? Because in order to play world game realistically, we have to do away with political boundaries. And needless to say, that is not possible today. But through so-called workshops and seminars, Fuller has played or imitated world game by producing what he called a Maxian globe. This three-dimensional polyhedral globe would be hung from the ceiling of a gymnasium and would be lowered and unfold to become a two-dimensional map of the world. And this would become the playing board for the participants. And they would try their best to coordinate all the world resources to the best advantage of all mankind. But like I said, it hasn't been able to be practiced realistically because of political boundaries. Now, Ted Turner of CNN was very influenced by the positiveness of world game. And it's said that he created CNN from the idea that he borrowed from Fuller's world game. In other words, he created CNN to disseminate information globally to the entire world, to bring the whole humankind together as one. Now, he also helped sponsor and produced what he called the Goodwill Games that were staged in the 80s, from 1986, for 6 years, when some communist states, countries, boycotted the Olympics. So he had over 100 countries countries participate in these goodwill games for 6 years. And this was an outcome of the concept of world game. In Japan, there's another anthropologist and friend of mine by the name of Mr. Shinichi Takemura, who developed this globe monitor he calls tangible Earth. Now, this tangible Earth is 1/10,000,000th of the Earth's diameter. In other words, it's about 1.2 meters in diameter. The whole sphere is a monitor showing in real life, in real time, what's happening on Earth at present. So it can show tornadoes erupting, volcanoes erupting, hurricanes, tidal waves, and so forth. And this is the tool that Fuller had really dreamt about. But in his time, there were no computers yet to make this possible. I'm sure he would be overjoyed if he were alive today to see this happening. This is such a great, great educational tool that I believe every classroom of every school in the world should have one, as well as in every office of every corporation, especially politicians' offices should have a tangible Earth so they can know what's happening on Earth and how they can really coordinate the resources, energies, what have you. And the most important aspect that especially children would learn from this tangible Earth is the fact that Earth has no political boundaries. It's basically one. And if we should treat it as one, it can work as one for all humankind. About 3 years ago, I was asked by the prefecture, Hiroshima Prefecture, to help lead a group of about 25 designers of all sorts of genres to sort of redevelop, to bring back the shrinking population of an island off of Hiroshima called Osaki Kamijima. I accepted the position, and for over 2 years, every month we would gather once a month. And what I tried to do was to create a program in the spirit of world game, thinking that if the idea, the concept of world game cannot operate or work in a small community, it surely would not be able to work globally. And so we tested it. I'm very happy to report that after 2 years, not a great many, but some are returning to the island, especially the young people. There's a new international boarding school being built right now at this moment that will open in the spring, bringing not only children from all over Japan, but from abroad as well. And the program has ended officially 2 years ago. But I'm happy to report that the program has been taken on. The legacy is still alive by a number of designers that have decided to move into the island and to carry on the same program unofficially. And so now we have a number of share houses, cafes, restaurants, galleries that try to not compete but cooperate with each other to make everybody happy. OK Island. And finally, I would like to end with this one last slide that I recently initiated called Little Things Change the World. Bringing about a revolution or overthrowing government is beyond my power. But I can do little things like saying hello, offering a smile, doing a kind deed, expressing thanks, helping, understanding, sympathizing, forgiving, and so much more in my daily life. Such acts of kindness are possible anytime, anywhere, and can be done for anyone, animal or plant. To help make the world a better place for all sentient beings, I commit to doing such simple acts each and every day, at every chance I get. If each of us sets this example in their respective communities, I believe that in time we can create a world where hope, peace, understanding, and love have replaced fear, war, prejudice, and hatred. Thank you for your attention.